Hi, this is a video to show you how to create this Geneva wheel assignment. If you take a look at it, there are a lot of circles. So if I click over to show you the basics of what I started with circles and then created this 45-degree line and offset it so that I could create this one opening and use polar array to create the others. So getting started, I can draw a circle with a radius of 1.2, another radius of 1.7 right there. Those are the bigger ones. So let's get started. I'm going to go to the draw panel. I'm actually in the 3D solid modeling ribbon, and you can change from 2D to 3D at the bottom right corner. Instead of using the drafting and annotation workspace, we're going to use the 3D modeling workspace. I know it's a 2D project at the beginning, and if you want to stay in the drafting and annotation workspace, you can draw it from there too. I'm going to use the 3D modeling workspace. I'll go up to the draw panel here, and just so that we can keep on track, we have a radius of 1.7 and a radius of 1.2. We'll start with those. So I'll go up to circle center radius, pick a start point, and type in 1.7 and enter. I can use the wheel of my mouse to get closer by rolling the wheel towards the computer, or you can use these tools on the right hand side in the navigation bar. We have here the full navigation wheel, which you can use to pan and zoom. We'll also need a circle center radius that's 1.2, but we're going to start from the center here and click and type in 1.2 and enter. Looking back at, we have a diameter of 1 and a diameter of 0.36. I believe it is 0.36 diameter. So I'll go up to circle center diameter and click in the middle there and type in 0.36. And then another diameter of 1. Circle center diameter, click in the center, and 1. Okay. So this is where it gets a little bit hard to keep track of all the circles. We've got the smaller one, we've got this one here, and we've got two bigger circles. And if we look at this drawing, we're starting to see those two center ones and then these two outer ones. We also have a circle out here that's drawn from the quadrant of the outer circle. So we'll draw. So we'll turn on our quadrant object snaps and we'll draw this circle radius 0.97. So down at the bottom right corner, I'm going to go to the object snaps here and pick up my quadrant object snaps, and then I'll go to circle center radius and I can click right here on the quadrant. The diameter was 0.97, just to verify, 0.97. So I'll type in 0.97 and enter. Now, in order for us to draw a line that's 45 degree or increments of 45 degree, one way is to set up down here the polar tracking angles 45, 90, 180, or 135 and 180. So I'm going to go ahead and click here to change that to 45. It doesn't matter how long the line is, so I'm just going to start the line tool here in the draw panel. Click the center of this circle, and as long as I keep it at increments of 45 degrees, I can pull my mouse out here to 135 and click, and then enter, or right click and pick enter. Okay, now I'm ready to draw this small circle that has a radius of 0.12 and then offset these lines with that radius, which is half of the diameter of the circle. So the radius is 0.12. I can go up to circle center radius and draw that intersection here of 0.12. And offset this line 0.12. So I'll go to offset, type in 0.12 and enter, select the line and click to the right and select that same line and click to the left. Now I'm starting to see this one opening develop. I can then start the trim command, press enter to select everything as a cutting edge, and start to take out some of the line work that I don't need. This is where you have to kind of pay attention to the hard copy and make sure that you're clicking on the objects that you don't want in your drawing. And you may end up with a couple of extra lines that you have to erase. I can enter and use polar array. I'll start the polar array, which is underneath the rectangular array. I'll select these two lines and this half circle and enter. And then the center of the array is going to be the center of all these circles. We do have a total items right here of 4. We have 4 of them. I'll press enter. First I have to change this items from 6 to 4 and enter, or click, and then you'll see that we have our openings. I can go ahead and close the array. Now we could draw these circles at each one of the quadrants, or we can use polar array. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and use array, polar array. I'll select this circle, enter it, pick the center right here as my center point of the array, and then again change my total number of items to 4 and close the array. Now I have some trimming to do. Let's just check our line work here. We need to trim part of this circle, the inner circle. We don't really need this outer circle now. And we need to also trim here where the offset was created. We'll get started by starting the trim command and pressing enter, and then I'll click out these pieces here that I know I don't need, and also the smaller openings. And one thing about the polar array is that the objects are all one piece, so I have to enter to get out of the trim, and notice that these are all together, kind of grouped together in the array. So if I did them individually, I could easily trim them, but because I did the array, we have to explode them. There are times when we have to explode an array so that we can work with it. So in this case, I'm going to go to explode, which in the 3D world here, workspace, we're going to find it underneath the modify panel right here, explode. I'll then select these 4 circles and enter them. Now I can go back to trim, start the trim tool, press enter, and now I can trim these pieces out. I'll just delete the rest there. I'll just trim this out here so that I'm now forming my object. I'll press enter and erase all of what I don't need here. All of this. I'm just going to select it, and you can either click on the erase icon or you can right click and pick erase. So now we have this keyway to create this little opening here that is 0.10 by 0.08. So the first thing I'll do is I'll draw a line that goes straight up from the center of the circle. So I'll start the line tool, I'll click in the center of the smallest circle, go straight up and click. Just draw a regular line and enter. And then I'm going to offset that 0.05, which is half of 0.1. So I'll start the offset command, type in 0.05 and enter. I'll select this line that I just drew and then click to the right, and then select that line that I just drew again and click to the left. Now we have the width or the sides of the keyway. At this point I'm going to draw a line from the top of the circle, which intersects with that line there, over, so I can use it for the top of this keyway. There's no specific distance here because I'm only using it to get the height of it. I'm going to now offset that line up 0.08. So I'm going to start the offset command, type in 0.08 and enter, and then select this horizontal line and pick above it and enter. Okay, now I can extend this line with grips. There's several different ways we can do this. I'm going to select the line and then pick inside this blue grip on the left side and just stretch it over and click. Use my escape key to get rid of those grips. Okay, I'll use trim. I'll start the trim command and I'll press enter and select what I want to trim here. All of this inside piece, these inside pieces, and I'll end up with a bunch of lines I have to erase. Oh, this one I didn't trim, so I'll just stretch it back. But I can erase this one here and here. There's my keyway. It may have been a different dimension, but according to this, it looks like it's 0.1 by 0.08. So maybe it's drawn a little bit different way. I'm using this video to show you how to draw it based on the dimensions that you have and how it might be presented. So there are several different ways that we can draw this and several different ways that we can dimension it. The way that I'm going to move forward with drawing this would be to draw it as a 2D here in model space and create it as a 3D and then use viewports to set it up in the layout space. So the first thing I'll do is create another layer for this center line. This circle right here is actually a center line. So I'll go to layer and layer properties and pick the new layer icon and create a layer for dimensions. And I usually create a layer called dim text, and I put all of the dimensions and all of the text on that layer. Every company has a different way of working with layers. I'm going to press enter twice. I'm also going to create a layer called objects, which is what all of these lines will go on. I'm going to show you how to move objects to different layers. And the other one that we wanted to create was a center line or center layer. So for the center line layer, I'm going to pick in the line type column the word continuous here. We did this in class, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. I picked the word continuous under line type for the center line. I'm going to pick load and then scroll down to center and highlight center for the center line. I'm going to pick OK, but here I want to make sure I click on center because I'm establishing that layer for center, and I'll pick OK. See, so now the line type is center. For the objects layer, like we did in class, we want that to be bolder. So we're going to highlight objects, and in the line weight column, there are a couple of different ways of working with line weight. We're going to use this way. The other way would be to use color to represent line weight, but for what we're doing, we're going to use this column here. I'll click on the word default and scroll down like we did in class and highlight 0.6 for something a little bit thicker. Now we're going to eventually start to place dimensions, so we'll double click on this little sheet of paper in front of dim text so that we can have that one current. I'm going to go ahead and change the color of some of these. I'm using a black background, so I'm going to try to stay with darker colors. If you have a black background, go ahead and use green or yellow, something bright. Okay, now I can close out of this layer manager, and what I'd like to do, I'm going to go ahead and erase this little line here. What I'd like to do is move all of these objects onto the object layer. So I'm going to click in space and pull my mouse to the right so that that line doesn't get selected. I'm going to select everything except for that line. I'll go over to layers and drop this layer list down and pick right on the layer objects. There it is. I didn't change the color, so maybe I will, just so that you can see that they will change to a different color. I'll go ahead and make them blue. See, so all of these objects are on the object layer. I also need to click on this circle so that I can select it. I'm going to go to the layer drop down, and this is the quickest way to move something to the right layer. You select it, you go to this drop down of layers, and you just click on which layer you want it to go to, which is center line. Now I'll change the color of the center line layer so you can kind of see the different color. There we go. I'll use my escape key to get rid of the grips. Now notice that the line type is a little bit bigger in scale than what the original drawing is, and we learned this in class, but let's do it again. It's line type scale, so it's LT scale. You type in LT scale and enter, and instead of it being 1, let's try 0.5. Type in 0.5 and enter. You see how it's starting to tighten up a little bit? Maybe I'll go even smaller. I'll type in LT scale and enter, and then I'll try maybe 0.25 and enter. And see, now it's a little bit tighter than this, but I think that scale for that center line type is appropriate. I'll leave it at 0.25. Okay, also I believe this line right here in the drawing is center line. So I'll go ahead and go to the layer drop. I'll select that line and go to the layer drop down and put it on the center line layer. There we go. Okay, so now we're ready to dimension. I did say in class that it's okay not to have exact dimensions like this. The first thing I want to make sure is the current layer is dim text. And then in the annotate tab, there is a command called linear, but if you click on the arrow next to linear here, you'll be able to get to radius right there. And so here's radius. I'm going to go ahead and click on this circle and just come out here and click. Now what you're seeing here is that the number is huge, and that's because the dimension scale is too big for this smaller object also. So we can type in D and enter to get to the dimension style manager. We'll just stay with the standard style and we'll pick modify. In the primary units tab, we can change our precision. It looks like most of the numbers are rounding here at 0.00. And we want to just keep everything else the same way. The main thing is we want to go to the fit tab. In the fit tab, we're changing the overall scale. The overall scale, let's try 0.5, see what happens. 0.5 will give us a smaller number. It's actually pretty good here at 0.5. If you want to go smaller, you can, and as we put more dimensions on here, we can go with a smaller scale factor. Most of the time you'll know what the scale factor is based on the plot scale. So if it's a specific dimension, we can use a scale factor based on that dimension. Okay, so now I can go to this linear drop down and continue with some of the other dimensions. Maybe I'll stick with radius and be able to pick up this circle here. It's okay if you decide to put your text a different place. We have a radius of this outside circle. Maybe it's getting a little crowded here. I might pull this out here. Maybe even just line it up with the other one. There we go. We also have diameter, so I'm going to go back to this drop down and pick up diameter of this circle. There's one right over here. And another one here. Just following along in the detail. We can even draw a line. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to the Home tab and start the line icon, or you can type in L for line. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line that's here so that we can use it to create this angular dimension. That line needs to be on the center line, so I'm going to select it and go to layers here and drop this layer list down and put that line on the center line layer. Use my escape key to get rid of that. So at this point we can go back to annotate and dimension using angular. Underneath linear there's a tool called angular. With the angular dimension you need to have two lines to select by default, and there's my 45 degrees. I can go ahead and place it there. What else do we have? We have a dimension here. We won't be able to use linear, but we can use aligned. The aligned command aligns the dimension with the 2 points that you pick. So we'll pick on aligned and then pick these two lines, and there it is. I've got the 0.24. There is a leader here for the keyway. We may have to change the scale of it too. So under leader, there's multi-leader right here. I'm going to get close enough to track over here. I just rest my pointer on the object snap and pull my mouse over a little bit so that I can click here for the arrow. You see it's real small. Oh, it's real big. There we go. The arrow is pretty big, but I can go ahead and click And if I type it in, it's going to be large, but we can change it. So that's 0.10 by 0.08. And then I'll enter and put here keyway. And click in space. Big, right? Same thing as the dimension. It's a larger scale that we need to reduce. And so what we can do is go back to, I'll make this bigger so you can see it. We can go back to there are a couple different ways we can go here. In the annotate tab under leaders, I can click on this small little arrow at the bottom right corner in order to access here the multi-leader style. Now if you can't find it, you can always type in M leader style. The multi-leader style manager, I'm going to go ahead and pick modify. This is that leader that we're changing. And there are a lot of different things you can change in here. What we want to go to is the leader structure tab, so we can change this scale. And this specify scale right here, that one, is the same thing we did for the smaller dimensions for the dimension type. So we're going to go ahead and type in 0.5 and pick OK and close. I think, did we use 0.5? I think we did. Let's type in D and enter. And just to double check, go to modify. And yep, we use 0.5 for the dimensions. And now we're using 0.5 for this leader. They all look a little bit too big, I think, compared to the detail. If you want to go in and change it to 0.4, it's completely up to you for your portfolio. The one thing I'm noticing that we're missing here is the dimension of this outside circle that we used in order to start the circle. That's 0.97. So one thing we could do is to draw a line from the center of this circle out to the center of where that inside circle started. So in this detail, there are a lot of different things that we've had to go through, like the leader and some of the scale factors and quite a few different things. And so another different thing that is not a default is how this radius right here is placed to look like the one in our drawing here, to look like a line with the text on the inside. So without changing the dimension style, we can select here this leader dimension, right click, and go to properties. Under properties, you'll see that you have quite a few tabs here that match kind of when you type in D and enter and go to the dimension style. But the dimension style manager controls all of the dimensions. Right now I have just this one selected, and I'm going to change specifically that one so that it looks like this. The one way to do that is to go under this fit section of the properties dialog box and change here the text movement from keep dimension line with text to here move text no leader or move text add leader. So we want to go move text no leader, and then in our drawing we can click on the grip that's closest to the text and pull it over enough where you can see the arrow and the line. When I click, you'll be able to see that there's a line like in the drawing here, an arrow with a line with the text inside. I can use my escape key so that you can see that that dimension is in place. And what they did was they put a little line here to represent the end of or the beginning of this outer arc. There's so many different ways of doing this. Just to keep it simple, let's just use a linear dimension for this. So I'll go to linear and click the center of the circle and the end of this line, and just throw here my 1.7 dimension. I can even select it, click in the grip, and pull that text over a little so that it's not running through the object. A little different, but I think it works. I can even take this line here and put it over in the Home tab on the layer center line so that it can look like a center line coming through. I've got the 1.70 dimension to start this arc here. If you feel more comfortable with here extending this line, you can select the dimension, pick the grip here at the end of the dimension and pull it up a little bit so that we can have this kind of little plus sign here that represents where this arc starts. Okay, and then the last thing that we'll do for the two-dimensional drawing with the dimensions is to add some of the text that we need for all these dimensions. So if you double click on the 45 and you use your arrow keys to change the blinking cursor to the right side of the 45 degrees, you can put a space, and with your cap locks on, add TYP and click in space. So double click on the text and then replace it. The 45 degrees is a filter, so you want to, or a field, so you want to make sure that you keep it highlighted. If you accidentally took the 45 degrees out, it's not associated with the lines that you used, so the number will always be whatever you type in. So if I type in 45, and then I need the little degrees symbol, so in case you did get rid of it there, you can go up to here, symbol, and down to degrees, or type in percentage %D for degrees. So we do also need a typical here after the 0.12. Same thing, double click, use your arrow keys to scooch the cursor over, put a space, and then TYP. You can even at the beginning of TYP press enter so that you can have two lines. I might just pull this down just a little bit. There. And over here, double click and do the same thing. Add here an enter and TYP. Okay, so that really concludes just this part of the drawing. I'm going to post another second video that will extend this 2D drawing to include 3D and a side view by using viewports and setting up the paper. You can get started by creating this 2D drawing and then go to the second video to finish up this assignment in 3D.